Anything else? All right. So kind of gather around here. I think this more of a formal discussion, lecture or something. If you want to, you can. Up to you. So we've been working with kind of two basic things for the past couple of months. One is exploring these three dimensions of consciousness that O Sensei talked about, the manifest, hidden, and divine. And the other is a more integrated eye. So what I wanted to do today was to kind of lay the map out that O Sensei sort of created, kind of sketched out for us in a way that it's a functional thing. So the map is not the territory. The map is not an embodiment of metaphysical truth so much as it is a working thing that allows you to do two things, as we've said before. One of them is kind of see where you are in terms of the progression of your training. And based on that piece of information, you have a better idea of what to do next in order to let your training and progress continue. So that's sort of the functional benefits of a good map, and I think O Sensei's map was pretty good. So if we go back to sort of the very beginnings of creation that he talked about on occasion, sort of his cosmology of things, the creation occurred when like a pinhole developed, and kind of the energies of the creation sort of flew or burst through that pinhole and then began to spread. Sort of his version of the Big Bang, you might say. But before that happened, the eyes or the souls, whatever you want to call them, were created first, so that they could be present at the creation and in a certain way sort of co-creators of the creation. So when that occurred, and the energies of creation began to flow out, the response from the eyes, there were kind of two basic responses, neither one of which really worked very well. If we go back to our model of the mind of I and the body of I, the eyes that were sort of more mind of I oriented were fascinated, entranced, whatever, by the beauty, complexity, and elegance of the creation. It's like a big swimming pool, just jump right in. But in the process, kind of lost the connection with the body of life, kind of lost their sense. So as the creation itself began to unfold and became more and more specific and kind of concrete until it got down to this, the eyes continued to sort of dive and go deeper and deeper, and in the process sort of forget their connection to that original event. And the O Sensei said one time we got to the point where we were so confused we thought we were apes. So the eyes that were sort of more mind of I oriented, that's what happened. The eyes that were a little bit more body of I oriented were reluctant to participate. And I think I've told you the story from the Zohar where God had to sort of convince the eyes to give it a try. He sort of had to do the used car salesman thing. This is really good creation, I'm give it a try. Those eyes got entangled in sort of the opposite way in which they very grudgingly participated. And so they had their own forms of entanglement and sort of disgust and dislike and unhappiness with being in creation. It really didn't matter which direction. When the eyes split apart that way, the focus on wholeness and kind of the healthy experience of the creation became very difficult. So what happened is, in one way or another, the eyes became so entangled that they sort of forgot who they were as sort of a true eternal self. So that sort of summarizes, in a certain sense, O Sensei's view of the human condition as we experience it today. And so we all know people who are kind of high on life but trip over their own feet and can't really accomplish anything. and other people who were such curmudgeons that saying good morning to them or something is a dangerous thing to do. And of course, there's much less extremes than that, and we feel some of those extremes ourselves sometimes. But in any case, the human condition is one where at a given moment in time we're kind of entangled with the creation in a way that isn't particularly healthy or was not really intended from the beginning to be the case. So that's sort of his description of how we got here. So any questions or comments or further thoughts about that?
It's like the first major problem of free will.
That's right. He calls it the original mistake. So yeah.
Is there anything said about why the eyes were created first to witness the creation?
The reason they were created first is the whole purpose of the creation was for the creator to sort of share itself.
Right.
So it has to have somebody, in effect, to share itself with.
That wanted that.
Use a more homely phrase, it's not much fun to go out to dinner in a fancy restaurant by yourself. Rather than go with somebody
Share the
else.
experience.
Share the experience.
And the flavors, yeah.
So, along those lines, O Sensei said the creation actually flowed, the energy of the creation actually flowed through the eyes. That's the sense in which we were sort of co-creators. So one thing that happened, which was neither a positive or a negative, but explains some of our interests, is various eyes sort of got interested in particular aspects of the creation right from the very beginning. So when it gets down to this level, you can see why some people are very musical, some people are very mathematical, some people are kinesthetic, empathetic, and so on, because of that original level of interest. And that's sort of the contribution that the eyes can make to the creation when they're in a healthy relationship with it. So that's the goal, is that healthy relationship. So anything on this before we kind of continue the story a little bit?
Is there a finite number of eyes? Do we know that, or if it was like all the eyes that are ever going to exist were developed then, or do we know that?
I think it's the latter.
Aye.
Although I don't recall whether he said that specifically or not.
Aye.
The eye is sort of an eternal thing, so
Gotcha.
it makes sense they were all there.
All there.
Anything else on this before we?
In terms of say the eyes that were more body-centered, that were sort of entranced into becoming a part of the creative process, what is it said that, how long did they hold out, and was there anything specific that drew them toward investigating in the same way that the eyes that were more mind-oriented were already plunging headfirst?
Well, they got a little nudge.
How did you get him through the wall?
You remember your first day in kindergarten, right? Or at least some people's first day in kindergarten. And one that takes you there, and she's trying to walk out the door, you're holding on to her leg, and she's like, "Oh, it'll be okay." It was kind of like that. So I think O Sensei's great accomplishment as a sort of a teacher and a creator of a training system is he had a very deep understanding of how the universe worked and what sort of our position in it is. And he embodied that understanding. So it was more than just something he could sort of draw on a board or write a treatise about. He did have some drawings he did do a lot of writing, but so he had a deep understanding, but then he embodied that understanding. And the third thing he did is he created a training system to help us sort of accomplish the same thing. Those three things. So, in a way, what O Sensei's objective for Aikido in a big sense is we start in a state of entanglement, for whatever reason and at whatever level. So everybody's kind of at their own level of entanglement. Some people more, some people less. They have good days, bad days, and whatever. But through a progressive process of sort of backtracking from a place fairly far down the line into the creation, backtracking back further and further and further, until in a certain sense you're back at that original point of decision. And then the backtracking along with the other practices that you do helps you to make a better re-entry relationship with the creation, where your presence there is a positive thing, but it doesn't create entanglement. So he called that the fullness of the echo. First you're sort of, you're here, then you're here, then you're here, then you're here, then you're here. Right? And so from here, I can relate to the creation in a much healthier way than if I'm relating to it here. So that backtracking does two things. One is it creates a state of less entangled and ultimately disentangled relationship to the creation. The other thing it does is it helps the eye to experience a fuller and fuller, greater and greater percentage of the creation as that backtracking occurs. So at one point in the Secret Teachings book, O Sensei says that it's possible to take the entire creation in a single glance. But he said at the moment even he couldn't do that, but he said it's possible to do that. So one of the images that O Sensei uses that I like is, if you think of a tabletop with dough on it, like cookie dough or something, a fairly small part of the creation is sort of maybe that one little cookie cutter